Let's start with our fourth module, in which we shall identify the procedure for carriage of prisoners on board, identify the procedure for carriage of weapons and ammunition.
Professor, why would an airline carry prisoners on board?
There may be a number of reasons why prisoners need to be transported by a commercial airline, such as transporting them for trial or confinement to a place that is different from the place of arrest. Remember that air transportation is the fastest mode of transportation available.
Professor, in that case, how would you define a prisoner?
A prisoner is a person who has been arrested under any law that is in effect.
Professor, is there any specific procedure to be followed for carriage of prisoners on board?
Yes. Let's take a look at them one by one. First of all, an airline should not accept a prisoner and escorts as passengers unless approval has been obtained in advance from the state and other operators that may be involved en route and at the intended final destination. In such cases, sufficient advance notification should be given to the airline so that prior agreements can be made. A responsible representative of the airliner should be informed of the transportation date of a prisoner well in advance or as soon as feasible in an emergency by the policing authority officers or other authorized persons. In addition, the responsible representative should be informed about the identity of the person being escorted, the flight on which transportation has been arranged, and whether or not the escorted person is considered dangerous. A prisoner should be escorted by one or more policing authority officers. Escorting officers should ensure that a prisoner does not carry contraband, weapons, matches, or other potentially dangerous items. Escorting officers should be informed by a responsible representative of the airline of the potential danger to the safe operation of the aircraft, and also if they should take any action during an act of unlawful interference without direction from the pilot in command. Escorts should be equipped with adequate restraining devices to be used in the event they determine that restraint is necessary. Under normal circumstances, a prisoner should not be restrained to any part of the aircraft, including seats, tables, etc. Escorts should not carry mace, tear gas or similar incapacitating gas-generating devices on board an aircraft. If there are any other security personnel or passengers who have been authorized to carry firearms on board the aircraft, they should be made aware of the transportation of prisoners and escorts and their location. Escorting officers and prisoners should be seated as far to the rear of the passenger cabin as possible, but not in a lounge area, which is next to or directly across from an exit. Escorting officers and prisoners should only be seated in a row of 2 or more seats, and at least one escort should sit between the escorted person and any aisle. The prisoner should be accompanied by escorting officers at all times and kept under surveillance, including visits to the lavatory. No intoxicating beverage should be served to escorts or prisoners while on board the aircraft. Prisoners can be served food at the discretion of escorts, but should not be provided with metallic cutlery or any other crockery or cutlery item which may be used as a weapon. Escorts and prisoners should be boarded before all other passengers and disembarked after all other passengers have left the aircraft. Following the judgment of a responsible representative of the airline, an airline can refuse to accept a prisoner who may jeopardize the safety of other passengers.
Professor, now that we have seen the procedures for carriage of prisoners, there are 2 questions that I want to ask you. Why should any person be allowed to carry a weapon and ammunition on board a commercial aircraft? And are there any specific procedures for the carriage of weapons and ammunitions?
In answering your first question, there are a number of reasons why a weapon and ammunition may be allowed to be carried on board a commercial aircraft, such as when authorized police or military personnel are traveling on official duties and are required to take their weapons with them, when authorized personnel, sky marshals, are on board an aircraft and are allowed by law to carry weapons with them. When passengers who hold legal authority to possess arms and ammunition want to transport it from one place to another. State authorities may permit the carriage of weapons in the following locations: on-board aircraft, either in the cabin compartment or as consignment in the aircraft's cargo hold, or other inaccessible areas, for example, a specialized lockable weapon compartment.
The relevant state laws also should be cited, and the responsibilities of the aircraft operators should also be specified. The carriage of weapons on board an aircraft by law enforcement officers and other authorized personnel is permitted in accordance with the relevant law of the local regulatory authority. The designated authority responsible for the review and approval of requests for the authorized carriage of weapons by individuals in the cabin compartment is the local Civil Aviation Security Regulatory Authority.
Professor, in answering your second question, aircraft operators transporting individuals authorized to carry weapons should ensure that proper written documentation authorizing the carriage of a weapon is present. Prior to boarding, armed individuals are instructed regarding all rules and regulations pertaining to the carriage of weapons. No alcoholic beverages are served to armed personnel. The pilot in command and all crew members should be notified of the number of armed individuals on board the aircraft and their seat locations. Aircraft operators are permitted to transport weapons in areas other than the cabin compartment by other than law enforcement officers under the following conditions. Weapons and ammunition should be of authorized category and quantity. The operator or representative of the operator should confirm that the weapon is in the passenger's hold baggage and that the weapon is not loaded. The weapon is stored in an area that is inaccessible to any person while the aircraft is in flight. The maximum number of cartridges or bullets authorized along with the respective weapon should be mentioned in the license. In addition, most countries have a stipulation on the quantity of ammunition along with each weapon which is allowed for carriage on a commercial aircraft.
Thank you very much, Professor. This has been a very educative session. That brings us to the end of Module 4, wherein you should now be able to identify the procedure for carriage of prisoners on board, identify the procedure for carriage of weapons and ammunition. Thank you.